Welcome back to Drinking and Reading, Coffee and Books, Weird Tales. Also welcome back to Death Has Red Hair. We're on to part 4, and I think we should dive head first right back into it. Well, last we left off, Peter was shoving the judge into his sheepskin so they could go out looking for Hank and see what he's getting up to. I think we all know what he's getting up to, sex pest. Anyway, straight back in. So yes, blah 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 blah, into my sheepskin coat with unnecessary enthusiasm. It certainly looked as if I were for it, so I shrugged my shoulders, knocked out my pipe, and tucked it into my pocket. Got my cap from a peg and followed that frantic boy. He led me a chase for a few minutes, for of course there was no way to locate Hank or the girl as long as they kept quiet. They might have been lurking about the cabin. If they had gone, in which direction had they disappeared? There was no sound of voices to guide me, but all at once Peter uttered a smothered cry, and his hand closed about my arm like an iron band. He jerked me right about face, and then I saw what he'd seen, a kind of flickering, glowing light off in the woods ahead of us. "That's her," said Peter ungrammatically. Ungrammatically? That's what it says. Now I've lost my place again. I can't take my eyes off the fucking thing. Lose my place. Ungrammatically. And his voice was actually trembling with some emotion I had neither time nor inclination to analyze at that moment. "What do you mean, that's her?" I echoed. "Judge, don't you understand? I mean, it's her hair." At that, I did give way to laughter that surged upward, shaking my diaphragm uncontrollably. Not that funny. "Peter," I choked when I could at least get out a word, "the lady's Titan hair has certainly turned your head. It must be luminous, if that's it. Boy, you are absurd." God, groaned Peter. His hand closed tighter than ever about my arm. "Judge, it's so horrible that I can hardly believe it myself. I daren't say it. Now, look! The reddish luminosity was bobbing unevenly up and down. As if it came from a lamp borne upon the head of a person walking rapidly, swimmingly across uneven ground. Yeah, that's what it was like. It was apparent to me that the girl carried a lantern only half opened, quite natural for a young person wandering around the woods at night. Could it be possible, after all, that Hank Walters had good foundations for his belief in his attraction for women? No. It looked that way, for this strange young woman had evidently forgotten her momentary anger at his rudeness of the afternoon, and had him within her lantern. It was ridiculous, and I really didn't like to believe a man like Hank. Surely she wouldn't have gone to such lengths merely to retrieve her cap. Surely not. Fuck. Some people in stories are stupid. "God!" ejaculated Peter Murray again. And then, "Listen," he warned me. I stood motionless, hardly breathing, and then I heard Hank's voice, and the crashing of his heavy body pushing its way through tangled undergrowth, and over dry, crackling, fallen limbs, and S-E-R-E, autumn leaves? Yeah, autumn leaves. "Yes, that's Hank," I whispered. "I know. Listen." Like the modulated voice that speaks behind the wings at the theatre, purporting to be momentarily speeding away, came these broken, breathless outbursts of speech. "Wait, you little devil!" a crash into the undergrowth. I'm coming right along, you red-headed beauty. One day... I'm coming right along, you red-headed beauty. Want your cap, don't you? Well, I'll give it to you, maybe, for a kiss. Another crash. Where's that lantern of yours, girl? Hold it this way. I can't see a thing. More tumbling and noise. Puffing, blowing, blowing. Struck a tree that time. A mighty impact it must have been to have jerked that grunt out of Hank's heavy body. Yeah, mighty impact. I'll catch up with you yet. Where's that light? Turn it this way, you she-devil. There was a moment's silence, broken only by the dreary, ominous whistle of a wind that came leaping down from the northwest, bearing on its sweeping pinions, a biting foretaste of winter. And then such a scream as I hoped never to hear in all my life, so frightened was it with horror, and something more followed while I was still humbled, a laugh so sharply tinkling as silver bells shaken together in a crystal globe. Oh, all right, yeah. This is pretty awesome, actually. She's done it. I knew she would. She's done it. I knew she would, cried out Peter frantically, and that gripping hand of his began to draw me forward through the woods recklessly. I was colliding as I went with trees and bushes that seemed to spring out of the ground to form obstacles to our mad onrush. Once I fell over a huge rock that almost appeared to have reared itself against us directly out of the bosom of Mother Earth. Are you mad? Are you mad? I gasped, trying in vain to pull my arm from Peter's frenzied grip. We'll both be killed running like this in the dark amongst these trees and rocks. Idiot that I am, shouted Peter in reply. I forgot the flashlight. It's right here in my pocket. He pulled it out, let go my arm, then turned it on. Blessed light. It was time we had it. I knew my face was bleeding where a dry branch had nearly skinned one cheek as we passed it, and I'd barked both shins. I rather imagined they were bleeding too. Peter ran ahead after that, throwing the light of the torch here and there. We had been going uphill gradually, and it dawned upon me that at once what had happened... No, that's not what happened at all. Scusi me. Where are we? What? And it dawned upon me all at once what had happened, for a ghastly kind of silence reigned, broken only by the wind's sullen whine, and over our own... You'd think I'd get better, but I don't. Broken only by the wind's sullen whine and our own trampling feet among dried leaves and broken twigs. Hank had been followed by the girl blindly, and her lantern had not been powerful enough to discover them their peril. They had gone running directly to the verge of the old quarry. Here! Here! Shouted Peter. The light from his torch shot across a wide space, all black below that brilliant beam. It was a warning I received none too soon to save me from the fate that had befallen the two who had been running ahead of us. I caught desperately with one arm at a tree trunk and swung about it, just barely checking my momentum. As I swung, my eyes followed the beam of Peter's light, down, down, piercing the darkness below. There was a huddled, motionless heap at the bottom of the quarry. I knew that would be Hank, or what was left of Hank. Splat. I knew too that Hank would never bellow. I knew too that Hank would never bellow curses again. How I knew. Yeah, because he fell off a cliff. Above him bent another figure that pulled at him now, turning him this way and that, glowing, shining, dulling the very light of the electric torch that was bent in another light that seemed very flame, leaping with such fervency of light that it hurt the eyes to see. Believe me or not, I knew what I saw, and it was the pulling, living flame of the red hair piling above the head of that strange girl that put the electric light to shame. I cried out in amazement and, I confess, with a sudden access of shuddering dislike, the fear. What hair? I told you, cried out Peter beside me, and where he had been fearful before, he became reckless now. He pushed the torch into my free hand, for I was still clinging to the tree that had served to break my dashing momentum. Played it on him, he directed. She won't like that. I'll manage to climb down somehow. I could hear the scraping of his feet and the clunk. We'll get to the end one day. But it's like really, really not over yet. Oh. Like a page to go. It's okay. I could hear the scraping of his feet and the crumbling fall of pebbles as he climbed down into the quarry toward that gruesome tomb. Once I heard his exclamation as he slipped. In an access of anxiety for him, I swerved the torch to light his perilous way, and when I saw he needed it, held it upon him, but my eyes were drawn from him by the sudden spring upward into vivid, astounding brilliance of that strange girl's leaping flames of red hair, as if they showed off more in the darkness than in the torchlight. It took me a moment to realize what that meant, and the torch trembled so in my hand that I almost let it slip into the quarry. Who was this creature whose flaming locks carried the leaping light of living fire? I found myself shuddering. And then Peter shouted from below, and I turned the light in the direction of his voice. He was leaning over Hank's body. Then he straightened up. The girl moved away and stood a little distance, silent. She, it would appear, had not been injured, and I stupidly wondered why not, and how she had managed to escape Hank's untimely fate. A moment later, I was to know. He's dead, I heard Peter declare. He was not speaking to me, for there was stern accusation in his voice. You did it! Why? Her finger pointed downward. I played the torchlight where she was pointing and saw Peter stoop. He drew a long, sinuous thing from Hank's dead fingers, and not easily at that. The girl swooped upon him, snatched at it, and then all at once the quarry went black except for the light of the torch, centered on Peter standing by the dead man. It was as if somebody had put an extinguisher over the torch. I heard a tinkling, penetrating ripple of cool, hard laughter. Where the girl had been standing, I discerned a faint glow as of a shaded lantern. This light suddenly rose upward like thistledown on the wind, but in a swift, straight movement. It was as if the shaded lantern had been fastened at the end of a rope and had been drawn steadily upward. It paused in mid-air, hanging motionless over the middle of the quarry. I felt a most uncomfortable qualm at the sight, and mentally refused to give entrance to the surprise that crowded upon my troubled mind. Peter was shouting at me from below, a quaver in his voice that he managed to restrain just above the point where it might have sounded craven. My sympathy was with him, for I felt the way his voice sounded. "For God's sake, Judge, don't drop that torch," he was crying at me. "I'm coming up. We couldn't get him out of here in the dark." The torch shook in my trembling hand. I could not have been much assistance to Peter in his climb up the side of the quarry. Needed a quick break. The girl had no lantern. She had come floating up out of the quarry as if she were lighter than thistledown on the night wind, and through the long pointed cap that enveloped her glowing hair, her hair glowed the light from those uncanny locks of flaming red. I mean that, the light from the hair. It burned and glowed from under the edges of her long tasseled cap, and blazed where it had escaped in occasional locks, as if it were living flame. It was unearthly. It was... No, wait, I was thankful when Peter had scrambled to my side. She's gone. She's gone? He asked rather than stated. I touched him, and he looked and saw what I was seeing. I could feel his sturdy frame shuddering. And as we stared, she must have drawn the cap closer over her brows and tucked those fiery straying locks, for it was as if someone had pushed an extinguisher down upon a flaming torch. Only a faint glow remained, like decaying wood, even that drifted away from us at last, like sea spume in moonlight, driven by a summer's zephyr. But I had seen her face in one flashing moment, distinctly. It was unlike the face of any mortal woman I had ever looked upon. Something uncanny, elfish. Ah, cool. Oh, I just got shivers. Alright. Peter was right when he said, extraordinary! I don't believe she means us any harm, he whispered, as if he feared to be overheard. I gave her back her cap, didn't I? He muttered uncertainly. But I say, Judge, let's light out of here. I may have seemed cowardly to go away, leaving the boy of my dead partner at the bottom of the black quarry, but perhaps if the body of my dead partner at the bottom of the black quarry. Perhaps if you had seen what Peter and I saw, you would have run for comparative shelter just as fast as we ran through the woods to my cabin. The November wind howled. The November wind howled. Seriously, there's only a couple of paragraphs left. Let's just fucking push on. The November wind howled and tore at us as we fled, the electric torch lighting our way enough that no other light showed itself in our path. All that was ever said between us about that girl, Peter said when we had reached our goal. Will-o'-the-wisp, he muttered thickly, breathing hard as he slammed the bolts of the cabin door firmly into place. Jesus fucking Christ. And then he went to work, nailing blankets over both the windows, nor did I question his action. Of course, we couldn't tell all our story to the coroner the next day. We said that Hank Walters had followed a girl that night and had inadvertently fallen into the quarry in the dark, and that we could not locate the girl. The coroner said it was clear enough. He even suggested that the girl might have pushed Hank. Peter and I... Well, we knew there was no need to push Hank when he was following the Ignis Fatuus. Ignis Fatuus. Ignis Fatuus. From Merriam-Webster, definition 1, a light that sometimes appears in the night over marshy ground and is often attributed to the combustion of gas from decomposed organic matter. Definition 2, a deceptive goal or hope. First known use of Ignis Fatuus, 1563, in the meaning defined at sense 1. History and etymology for Ignis Fatuus. Medieval Latin literally means foolish fire. What a loaded story. Alright, so there you go. That's what you get. That's what you get when you're a sex pest on a hunting party and you steal a girl's hat in the middle of the woods. The whole thing was pretty fucking random, if you ask me. But, you know, it was alright. It was alright. It was okay. It was a cute story. It was a cute little story. I really liked the description of the girl. It was really cool, like elfish and flaming hair, and she did like a little weird thing, and her tinkling laughter, that gave me chills. That's exciting. I like that. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this story. I've enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed getting back into weird tales. As you know, I love this, and it will continue. I apologize to anyone who's not, I don't know, all that interested in, you know, all the all the things I do with my channel. I can't help it. It's who I am. I'm very inconsistent. But, you know, I'm trying to pull it together. I'm trying to form some sort of, you know, give myself some sort of consistent structure in my life. Yeah, okay. I hope you've enjoyed. I've enjoyed reading. I hope you've enjoyed the dumb makeup tutorials. I can't say I've enjoyed doing them, but it's not unfun. It's a thing. Thanks for watching. I'll see you for the next one. Next up we've got Spider Mansion, because I said I would read that based off the fact that it was 50-50 on the Twitter poll. Yeah. So next up is Spider Mansion, and I'm very excited to read that. So I don't know, maybe I'll start tomorrow, maybe I'll start next week, maybe I'll start next month, who fucking knows. I will start and I will read it. I've got to send an email to someone now because I keep forgetting and keep being reminded, and I feel like a total jerk. Total asshole. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.